Alright guys, you know what it is. It's time for the Daredevil Advanced Guide. This guy is absolutely ridiculous. I honestly can't believe NetEase cooked so hard with Daredevil. This has got to be the most immersive character they've created so far. Like, you really feel like Daredevil. I mean, the whole limited vision system with the trade-off of seeing everything through the walls within that radius, I mean, it's bonkers. And I wanted to make sure that I got this one right. Like, he's an insane character with a ridiculously high skill ceiling, and hopefully you enjoy the gameplay in the background. As always, my guides are not practice range guides. I think those are kind of whack, because there's just some stuff we want to show it in the practice range, you know, just so you can see it in a vacuum. But I've also lost track of how many times there's been like some new insane combo that they show off something that you'll likely never pull off against an actual enemy in an actual match, because they don't just stand there. We don't do that here, okay? Also, I waited until I had about 26 hours of actual gameplay on Daredevil before even thinking about starting making this guide, because there's just some things you can only know if you've put the character through the ringer and you spent some time in the trenches with them. There's going to be so much crucial information in this video that I'm going to be honest, you might actually want to take notes, okay? There's a lot going on under the hood that people aren't mentioning and they're overlooking. And when you know all of the tricks, okay, your output will be insane. But before we dive into the vid, let me just take a minute to thank the sponsor who funded my time making this video. It's Rocket Money. In a world of subscription services, it can be frustrating to budget and manage your finances when it feels like every month is a moving target. With service prices constantly changing, streaming services merging, and trying to keep everything straight can be a real pain in the butt. Especially as a gamer and a dad and a hobbyist, like, free time is not something I have a lot of these days. That's where today's sponsor, Rocket Money, can be a real lifesaver. My neighbor has the exact same internet plan that I do from the same provider. And earlier this year, I found out that he was paying almost half as much as I was for the same company for the same service. Had I used Rocket Money, I would have saved hundreds of dollars this year, since they have an incredible feature that negotiates better rates for the services that you already have. And you don't even have to make a phone call and like talk to your provider and go through that painful song and dance of navigating their automated systems. But not only that, Rocket Money also shows you your current subscription services, and you can manage them all from one location, including cancellations, and you can see when your next payments might be due. And you can even use their budgeting tools to help plan where your money is going, so that you have extra cash to spend on things that you actually care about. In our case, like you and me, that's probably going to be these sick new Halloween skins in Marvel Rivals. So if you want to make finances a lot less stressful, use my link in the description, rocketmoney.com/truevanguard. Again, that's rocketmoney.com/truevanguard. And you can sign up for a free trial of Rocket Money right now. Join the now over 5 million people who are using Rocket Money every month. And if you vibe with the app, hey, you can check out their premium plan for even more features. Hey, big thanks again, Rocket Money, for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to Daredevil. All right, so I always like to start my videos off with a quick summary of the hero's core identity and their gameplay loop, okay? Daredevil is really a master of screw you in particular, right? He sort of singles out a target and then he bullies them, and then he has all the tools he needs to win that 1v1. He can constantly generate bonus HP for himself, and he can even reflect some CC abilities back to the targets, trap them with their own tools. Like, he's a master dueler. But the thing that really elevates Daredevil's gameplay, and what will really take you to the next level, is learning how to move around the battlefield intuitively and rapidly, okay? Gonna see a lot of gameplay in here where I disengage safely, but it's fast. And it leverages things like 90-degree angles that most heroes can't pull off with their movement. His movement skill gap is pretty wild. I know most guys are gonna focus on kills and combos, and there's a lot of that in here that is very important. But I'm also intentionally going to include a lot of approaches and disengagements, because I want you to see how to get into fights, and I want you to see how to get out of trouble and back to a neutral space. Because honestly, that's half of playing Daredevil well. And you have 3 abilities to leverage when disengaging and repositioning. You've got your defensive ability called Objection, where you can reflect incoming projectiles, allowing you to backpedal safely. You've got your grapple ability to grapple out of trouble, but most importantly, you also have Righteous Cross to make rapid omnidirectional changes. but it might be helpful to think of Daredevil as a CT scan, okay? You're like a surgeon, and Daredevil's vision is like a CT scan that lets you see potential points of weakness in the enemy team. You can see where their damage dealers and tanks are congregating, and you can also see where maybe one healer or one poke hero is slightly out of position. And his insane movement gives him the chance to pounce on those windows of opportunity and exploit that single moment of weakness like a surgeon with a scalpel to get in there, remove that enemy, and get out lightning fast. So let's start breaking down the kit one piece at a time. So Daredevil has a currency called Fury that he can spend to do cool stuff. He can hold 3 Fury maximum at a time. Fury is spent by hitting E on PC or the right bumper on controller, and that will pull out his chains and allow him to pick between 2 attacks. You can either slam the chains down to deal damage and generate bonus HP, or you can throw the chains to bounce between enemies for shared damage and apply a slow debuff to targets hit. Now, each of those 2 attacks consumes 2 Fury, and we'll talk about those attacks and their specifics later. But generating Fury is very important, so let's chat about how you get Fury, and then we'll talk about how you spend it. Okay, the simplest way to generate Fury is just to use your primary attack. Okay, each hit with your primary will deal 36 damage and generate 1/2 of a Fury charge. 2 hits, 1 full Fury charge. Basically, your primary attack is not really a primary attack. It's just a way to generate Fury and do a little bit of damage along the way, right? Daredevil's grapple ability, shift on PC, circle, or B on a controller, will actually grant you 2 Fury on use. So in a pinch, you can always grapple to a surface or to an enemy for an instant 2 Fury. But I seldom recommend using this as a means of generating Fury specifically. We'll touch on that ability later. Another way to get Fury, 2 Fury, is Daredevil's dash ability, which can be performed by hitting F on PC or left bumper on controller while targeting a highlighted enemy that you've tagged with your Sonic Pursuit. And the third way to gain 2 Fury at once is to block incoming damage with your Objection ability. That's right click on PC, it's the left trigger on controller. This only works if you've actually deflected some damage, okay? It will not generate Fury if you block nothing at all. And lastly, you can generate Fury by using your Righteous Cross attack. It generates just 1/2 a Fury charge, just like your primary attack. Okay, so those are all the abilities that generate Fury. Now let's break down each ability in the kit and figure out how to best use these abilities. So we start with Sonic Pursuit. This is how you initiate combat, so it's a good starting point. Sonic Pursuit allows you to ping an enemy within your vision and tag them with a marker. Now you can do this from up to 40 meters away, which is a ton of range. Now they will see the marker when you put it on them, so they'll know that you're hunting them. So it's important because you might, like if your goal is to ambush an enemy, you might actually want to wait until the last moment to hit them with the marker so they don't have time to sort of mentally prep and get buddied up with a teammate, right? But what does the marker do? So having an enemy tagged with your Sonic Pursuit marker has a lot of benefits. First, it reduces the amount of damage that you'll take from that enemy specifically by 20%, so that's huge. So you should always, always, always have an enemy marked if you're actively fighting them. And you can shuffle this mark around every few seconds to a new target if you need to. This 20% damage reduction is extremely important because mainly because it completely throws off lethal combos that your enemy has come to rely on. So suddenly their damage output is seriously handicapped, and they need to quickly supplement their standard combos with additional follow-up damage in order to win the fight against you. So that's why Daredevil is so hard to take down in 1v1s. Another passive benefit of the marker and having a target marked is that it increases your movement speed. So you'll see wisps of wind around you letting you know that you're moving faster. Now obviously this helps you close gaps and walk down enemies more easily. But having an enemy marked also enables you to rapidly dive on an enemy by hitting the same input to dash forward towards the target. And you can perform this dash as long as you're within 20 meters of the enemy. The dash will do a little bit of damage, about 21, and it will generate 2 Fury on hit. And it will also temporarily apply a blinding debuff on the target just to disorient them. But the biggest strength of the dash is simply allowing you to basically skip the last 20 meters of your approach and just be on your enemy suddenly. So this is how you get into an engagement very quickly. And when you kill somebody who is marked, you automatically refresh your ability to mark somebody and the dash that's attached to it. So you could mark someone, dash them, kill them, mark someone, dash to someone, kill them, and then just keep that loop going infinitely if you keep winning those fights. Now let's talk about the abilities that help you win the fight, and then we'll talk about the abilities that help you get out of trouble after that. So next up, we want to talk about Objection. Okay, so this is so much more important than people think it is. So you're going to see gameplay where I freeze enemies, where I sleep enemies, where I kill an enemy with an Iron Man ultimate, and all of that is because I know what the ability does and when to use it. Okay, Objection is your block ability. You swing your billy clubs around for 2 whole seconds, blocking all frontal damage. So note that Psylocke's ultimate, it always hits you from behind, so you can't block that. So you kind of got to know what this works against and what it doesn't. But any damage specifically coming at you from the front will be reflected. And notice that I said reflected, not blocked. So you will actually reflect projectiles and their effects back towards the enemy. So here, Luna Snow shoots her snowball at me, but I reflect it back and I freeze the blade standing next to her with it. This is really a lot like Captain America's loop when he dives on enemies. So you need to know what the hero is, who you're diving on, and what they can do. Okay, so if it's a Mantis, just know that she will immediately try to sleep you. So you dive, you hit her, and then you start blocking shortly after that. That way, you can reflect the enemy's CC ability back at them. So we want to do this to most support heroes in general. You'll reflect Luna's freeze, you'll reflect Mantis's sleep spore, you can even reflect Invisible Woman's damaging bubble that she throws down back to her and damage her with it. Use it against a Squirrel Girl, who will likely try to trap nut you when you dive on her. Use it on Black Widow, who will try to kick you and queue up her grapple. The more you know about your enemy and their kit, the more you'll get out of your Objection reflection ability. But here's the most important part of Objection that you really need to know. When you use Objection, try to hug the enemy as tightly as possible. That's because it's not just a blocking defensive ability, it's actually an attack. That's right. So as you're swinging those billy clubs around, they'll actually smack the enemy several times. And they have great reach. If the enemy is within 5 meters of you, they'll get smacked several times as you're swinging these billy clubs around for up to 50 damage. Just think about this, guys. Okay, this is a huge factor in 1v1s. It's literally a free 50 HP swing during a 1v1. You're dueling somebody, maybe a tank, maybe another duelist, and in the middle of the fight, you just stop and hold your input for Objection, and you just get to deal 50 damage point blank at them while taking no damage in return. And you can potentially do even more damage than that, because any projectiles that they send your way in those 2 seconds will go right back into their faces for even more damage. Additionally, any abilities that they use against you during that time will be negated and then go on cooldown. This is one of the most important things you can do in a 1v1 against half the enemy roster, okay? Objection wins fights, period. Objection wins fights. So in your 1v1s, throw it in there. But it's also important to note that Objection can be used to help you withdraw from a fight as well. Just make sure you don't turn your back, because it's only frontal protection. But you can backpedal away from a fight, and you'll backpedal faster, remember, if an enemy is currently marked by your Sonic Pursuit. And you can create a little distance for 2 seconds while you back away. So you can, use this purely defensively when needed. Just know that it has a 12-second cooldown, so be smart about when and how you use it. Okay, next up is Righteous Cross. Think of this ability sort of as a comma, okay? It goes in between distinct things that you do as Daredevil, sort of like a comma goes in between clauses and statements and phrases and whatnot in sentence structure. So you're weaving abilities together as Daredevil, and the Righteous Cross is sort of the connector that goes in between those actions. It has a few applications. So Righteous Cross replaces your primary attack after you do certain things. So if you use your grapple hook, now you have Righteous Cross for 5 seconds that you can use. If you use either Devil's Chain or Devil's Throw, which we'll get into next, you'll unlock Righteous Cross. Righteous Cross causes you to lunge forward a short distance in whatever direction you're looking. It does 52 damage, and it generates half a charge of Fury on hit. So the most obvious way to use this is in between abilities as a way of sort of doing a big chunk of damage and generating some Fury. We'll weave it into our combos here in a second, But one use that gets totally overlooked far too often is actually using it as an evasive ability, okay? An evasive movement ability. You're gonna see me use Righteous Cross to hit absolutely nothing a ton in this gameplay. That's because I'm using it to make 90-degree angle directional changes at key moments to avoid enemy sight lines and attacks. It's an extremely useful tool to use for survivability, not just offense. It's very versatile. Always consider your context and how you might use it properly. Also, quick tip, don't really hold the trigger down with Daredevil for your primary fire, because if you do something that queues up Righteous Cross and you're currently holding the trigger down, Daredevil just won't do anything at all, okay? So make sure you're pulling the trigger or hitting the left click each time you mean to throw out an attack. That way, you'll avoid these awkward pauses in your combat. All right, I'm sure this is the part most people are going to be most interested in, so let me talk about the two abilities that spend Fury. If you have at least 2 Fury when you hit E on PC, right bumper on controller, Daredevil will whip out his chains and hold them up in a ready position. From here, you can either hit right click, it's the left trigger on controller, to throw the chains out for a ranged attack called Devil's Throw. Or you can hit left click, right trigger on controller, to perform a heavy melee attack called Devil's Chain to lash out at an enemy in front of you. They each have their uses, and knowing which one to use in any given moment is really important, and it always depends on your context. So let's start with Devil's Throw. This attack has a range of 40 meters. You toss out the chains and they impact the initial target, and they can then bounce to other targets nearby and back to the initial target. They do 34 damage per hit. Enemies hit with this attack will receive a slow debuff momentarily. So obviously, this is a great tool against a group of enemies. You toss it out into a group of enemies, spread some damage throughout the crowd, and disrupt their movement. But here's the important part that you wouldn't know unless you did some experimenting. Devil's Throw has some hidden interactions that has to do with the size of the impact and the trajectory of the chains as they fly around. So look at the damage here that I do when I simply target one enemy and throw these out, okay? They hit the main target, they bounce to another target, they come back to the initial target for some more damage. And look at the health bar here, okay? 34 damage per hit. But now I want you to watch this. If I line the enemies up in front of me so that the first enemy eclipses my view of the second enemy, now watch how much damage the exact same attack does, okay? Did you catch that? We're doing considerably more damage when we line enemies up with this attack. But there's a second variable here. I'm also not actually throwing the chains at the enemy. I'm actually throwing the chains at the floor in front of the first enemy in this line. So I'm going floor to enemy 1, to enemy 2, to enemy 1, back to me. And for some reason, the game is going to calculate 2 extra hits into the mix because of that trajectory. Kind of wild, huh? So you'll notice in a lot of my gameplay, after I figured this out, I'm never throwing the chains directly at an enemy. I'm throwing them at the floor, trying to line enemies up. I want to impact the floor right next to them, which tags them with the area of effect of that first impact on the floor. But then they bounce to the nearest target, same guy I just threw it right next to, hits him again. And then they'll go off, they'll hit another target, and they'll come back and they'll hit that first guy again for a third attack, and then travel back to me and apply sometimes a fourth hit if you're lucky on their return trip. It's just weird. It's kind of inconsistent, but you're consistently getting more damage. The question is just how much more? I don't know. It's up in the air. Kind of wild. So in summary, line the enemies up, hit the floor in front of the first target, line them up, throw it at the floor, guys, right? Line them up, throw it at the floor. There you go. That's my tip. Now, this same idea of applying double damage when you target the feet is it's actually going to apply to the second attack we can do with our Fury called Devil's Chains. Now this attack lashes out with the chains in a heavy melee strike that converts all damage done into bonus HP for Daredevil. The thing is, we want to hit them with the chains, and we also want to hit them with the billy clubs themselves. And we can achieve this by targeting their feet. This makes the attack do twice as much damage and grant twice as much bonus HP. So this is basically a non-negotiable, guys. Don't use this ability unless you are using it this way, okay? Only attack the feet with Devil's Chain. Only the feet. It's a massive HP swing in the fight. This is how you win 1v1s against tanks. You just keep out healing them with bonus HP while taking massive swings at their HP in the process. If you perform the first Devil's Chain attack with all 3 Fury, you'll drop down to 1 Fury, which means that you can follow it up with a Righteous Cross and then just 1 primary hit, and you'll be back up to 2 Fury again, and you can just go ahead and perform a second Devil's Chain attack rapidly after the first. And you just sort of end up repeating this loop until the other guy dies half the time, right? You're just going to be going Devil's Chain, swing, 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 Devil's Chain, swing, 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 Devil's Chain, swing, 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 right? And just note that sometimes you'll need to take a second or a third swing with your primary fire to get back up to 2 Fury, so just keep an eye on your charges mid-fight, and always aim the attack at their feet. Now before we move on, we gotta talk about, of course, the core combo that literally everyone talks about. This is a tried and true, great way to initiate combat, and you'll see plenty of it in the gameplay. Get into the back line, focus on a healer or a poke hero who's isolated, and then drop this combo. Okay, we're gonna ready our chains, then we're gonna tag the enemy with our Sonic Pursuit. Then we throw out the chains with a Devil's Throw attack, and as soon as we throw them out, we want to cancel our own animation by queuing up the dash. So again, that's ready the chains, highlight the enemy, throw out Devil's Throw, instantly dash to the target, and wait for the dash to impact the enemy. Now you can accidentally cancel this dash with an additional input, so don't rush anything here. Wait for your dash to bring you all the way up to the enemy, and when the dash hits them, it will restore 2 Fury, the same 2 Fury that you just used to throw the chains, and now you'll be at full Fury again, and you'll also have a Righteous Cross ready to go since you just threw those chains. So after the dash, we hit them with the Righteous Cross, and then we follow it up with a Devil's Chain attack. That's over 270 damage right there. That's most enemies dead outright. So again, that is ready the chains, mark the target, throw the chains, dash to the target, Righteous Cross, Devil's Chain, and boom, that's a combo. Practice it in the practice range until you can do it in your sleep. It just takes time, practice, put in the reps, and then your body will just know what to do without you having to think about it, okay? But after that initial kill, you'll cut the enemy healing likely in half if you kill the healer, and you'll weaken their front line because of it. So now you can swing the fight in favor of your team, and you can then sort of be a hammer and anvil that pinches the enemy team between you and the back line and your own front line. Okay, so you got in, you got some kills. Now let's get you out of there. Okay, Daredevil has 2 key things to help him get out of trouble. One is his grapple, the other is his wall running. When it's time to bail, find a surface that is close to an exit point and grapple to it. It has a 25-meter range, your grapple's pretty good. It will pull you to that surface and then queue up a Righteous Cross, which you should absolutely use, and then continue your escape. Usually you want to pick a new direction to lunge towards with your Righteous Cross right after a grapple, to keep the enemy guessing, and to avoid projectile attacks that they send your way to try to finish you off as you're getting out. But you also want to use your wall running to avoid ground-based attacks and pursuits. You have 3-dimensional movement as Daredevil, and you absolutely need to leverage all 3 of those dimensions or you will die a lot. One note about your wall running, if you just sort of tap the jump button, you can travel kind of laterally along the walls, because you can't run sideways like you can with Spider-Man or with Iron Fist. You're going to run up and down, up and down. So if you're just sort of tapping the jump button while using your directional inputs, you can move laterally and just sort of like bunny hopping along the wall. And that's kind of how I like to use it. And you can take in your surroundings, move the camera around, and try and find a good place to pounce. You can hold in place when needed, right? You just hold onto the wall and just stay there. But I sort of like grabbing the wall and bunny hopping along it most of the time, just so I can take in more information. Now the grapple has one other use that's extremely important. It's an incredible tool for finishing off targets that try to run away or try to go get health packs. As soon as they decide the fight isn't going well for them and they try to bug out, that's when you can use your grapple to pull them back towards you and pull yourself towards them. You sort of meet in the middle, where you can then hit them with a Righteous Cross and then an easy Devil's Chain if needed, since the grapple gave you 2 free Fury charges. So the grapple, or Devil's Latch as it's called, is a great oh no you don't tool, okay? It's also kind of soul crushing for enemies when they get forced into a fight that they thought they were getting out of and they get pulled back into it. But make sure that you use the grapple offensively only when you know you're not going to need to use it evasively shortly after, because you will send it back onto a 12-second cooldown whenever you use it. So it's a bit of a gamble to use it that way, but definitely satisfying. It's really good against flyers like Iron Man, Storm. You know, you pull them to you and pull you to them. It's good against mobile targets like Black Panthers, Spider-Man, stuff like that when you need to finish them off. Let's talk about Daredevil's ultimate ability, Let the Devil Out. This ult is pretty crazy. Okay, Daredevil creates this aura bubble around him. Anything inside of it will take constant damage ticks and will have a blinding effect that gets worse and worse and worse the longer they're inside of it. Now, during your ultimate, you'll constantly generate Fury as well. It's about 1 charge per second. And you'll still gain Fury all those other ways that you're used to on top of that. So you basically have a ton of Fury to use during your ult. Now, I really like to use this ultimate to target backlines especially. It's great for eliminating both enemy healers and getting them off the board, or forcing them to pop support ults when they're out of position and they can't really get the full benefits for using their ult. So if you force them to pop a support ult way in the backline away from their team, they're going to spend half of their support ult just trying to get up close to their team so that their team can get the benefit of it. So you can really mitigate the value of support ultimates if you bait one out by using your ult. But your ult is also a great tool to use in a big team brawl on the point when there's a lot of chaos. So if your supports drop an ult, okay, you can combo yours on top of theirs for maximum effectiveness. But you're also not invincible in this ult, okay? You're still very vulnerable. So don't be too reckless with it. When enemies are all clustered up, I recommend spamming the heck out of Devil's Throw to spread big damage throughout the entire crowd. But when it's just 1 or 2 enemies, stick to them like glue, spam Devil's Chain attacks to eliminate them quickly. This ult is super fun, honestly. There's a lot of sick multi-kills in this video using it, but don't try to use it in a 1v6, okay? This ult will not go well for you if you try to 1v6 it. Isolate a small group, or pop it when you've got the support of your whole team there behind you to really capitalize on it, but never solo pop this ult into a large group. You'll just waste it. All right, let's bring this thing home, shall we? Tie it all together. I think the best way to tie this kit together would be to walk through a mock engagement one step at a time. So first things first, Daredevil has some crazy good sustainability in team brawls, but that's really where we want to be after we target the backline first, okay? So we want to take off angles and high approaches when possible. We don't want to pretend like we're a tank, even though we can tank a lot of damage as Daredevil when needed, but that's not our primary role. So we take an off-angle approach. We use our wall hacks to find a key target that we want to descend on. Then we ready our chains, we tag the target with our Sonic Pursuit, and then we open with our core combo. We throw the chains, we target the ground next to them when possible with the chains. We dash in, hit them with the cross. We start chaining our Fury attacks depending on the context. If we're outnumbered, we want to try to mix in some chain throws to bounce damage between all of them. If it's an isolated target, then we want to leverage our Devil's Chain attacks to slam the ground at their feet and give ourselves health while whittling down their health. We definitely want to throw in our Objection blocking ability for some free damage as we hug the enemy and reflect any that they send our way back at them, and follow it up with a Fury-based attack. Now, once we've either won that fight or it's become clear that we can't win it because they got some assistance from their teammates, then that's when we want to use our grapple to get out of there as quickly as possible and regroup with our team to get healed, to reset our cooldowns. And if we win that fight, it's probably a good idea now to join our front line and get into the team brawl that's going down. And we can constantly loop our Devil's Chain ability to keep ourselves topped off with bonus HP while taking big swings at enemy tanks. And when the time is right, we can now use our wall hacks to keep the enemy staggered and find stragglers who are trying to run back to their spawn to regroup with their teammates who are spawning up. That's the joy of wall hacks. And that's just all around the ideal way to play Daredevil. I gotta tell you guys, Daredevil's ceiling is so freaking high. You can do some incredibly nasty things with him, but a word of warning. Daredevil does not do well if you don't have a strong front line to play around. Okay, if your tanks are very bad, then Daredevil is kind of hard to play well. You really need a strong front line to use as a tether point. Also, that keeps a ton of pressure off of you when you do your dives. If your front line is weak, then enemy Vanguards and duelists will collapse on you the second you dive that back line, and you'll be crazy outnumbered. So beware of how your team composition might affect your viability in a match. You may be better off reinforcing your front line instead of being a diver in those matches particularly. But also beware of CC ability heroes who can lock you down, negate your grapple to get out of trouble. You've got Invisible Woman who can pull you back into her team when you're trying to get out. You've got Penny who can web you up. You've got Mr. Fantastic who can basically stun lock you infinitely when he wants to. He can go chest bump, distended grip, chest bump, and you'll just be grounded the whole time. So be mindful of what enemies the other team has that can really bully you, and then use that information when weighing the risk and reward of a potential dive. And that's basically the guide, y'all. I hope you picked up something new, something useful. Thanks so much for supporting my content here on YouTube. If you made it to the end of the video, would you let me know in the comments section so that I can leave a heart on your comment as a way of expressing my gratitude? You know, I don't mean to get mushy, but you guys supporting my content means the world to me. This is what allows me to keep my kids fed and healthy. It helps pay my bills, keep the lights on at home. So I owe my quality of life to all of you who tune in and watch my stuff. So never underestimate the value of your individual view on my videos. It really does mean so dang much to me, so thank you so much. On that note, be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.